All right, hello, eighth grade. Today we're going to do a quick benchmark number 2 review, and we're going to be covering 450 years from the 1600s to 1945. And in case you have not been listening this entire quarter, now is your time because we're going to cover pretty much everything that you're going to encounter on the benchmark. So keep your ears open. First thing first, we're talking about Native Americans in Louisiana. There are many different groups that you need to know. The main idea I want you to get from this is there were very established colonies of Native Americans in Louisiana, and we reviewed very early on in this quarter Poverty Point. No one's really sure why it was used, but it seems like some sort of sacrificial or ritualistic burial site or maybe ceremonial place. But no one's really sure why Poverty Point exists. This is in northwest Louisiana. Okay, moving on, another Native American group, the Natchez. The Natchez slave revolt against the French. The French tried to enslave them, and they were not happy about that. They went into a colony up the river from New Orleans and killed a bunch of the colonists. So the Natchez and the French were not friendly with each other. The French were friendly with many Indian groups in Louisiana, but the Natchez was not one of them. All right, moving on. We learned a lot about different explorers. De Soto was our Spanish explorer. He was the first European to see the Mississippi River, and he died and was buried in the Mississippi very quickly after he found it. La Salle, who was French, he named Louisiana after King Louis XIV. He sailed down the Mississippi and claimed Louisiana for France. And then finally, Bienville and Iberville in the early 1600s. Together, they were French explorers from Canada. They knew the North American continent very well. They founded New Orleans, and Bienville became the father of New Orleans, the first governor of the colony. Why did the French care so much about Louisiana? Well, if you look, here is New Orleans right here, south of Lake Pontchartrain, and the Mississippi River comes up through New Orleans, and it was going to be the place that controlled all of the shipping coming down the river out into the Gulf of Mexico. It was very economically important, and the French built colonies all up and down this Mississippi River right here in this big pink area because it was a very fertile place. The river flooded every year, and the soil was incredibly fertile for planting and agriculture. Remember, before Bienville founded, the French had a bunch of colonies in northern North America, especially in Canada, and they wanted to control the Mississippi River. The main reasons why they wanted to take control was because the Mississippi River was very strategic for their economy, and they also wanted to prevent the British here in the salmon color from moving west, and they wanted to maintain friendship pacts with the Native Americans. The French were, again, very close with the Native Americans, with the exception of the Natchez. All right, the Spanish took over after the French and Indian War in 1762. They ruled for about 40 years. Quickly, the colony went back to Napoleon. He decided it was too expensive for him to be able to keep, especially with the war back home in France, and he sold it at a bargain basement price to the United States. In the Louisiana Purchase, Thomas Jefferson bought it. Thomas Jefferson, like France before the Spanish controlled it, realized the economic benefit of controlling Louisiana and especially controlling New Orleans. It was good for their market economy, market being the operative word. Okay, quickly moving on, the United States during the antebellum period, which is before the Civil War. Remember, ante means before, bellum means war. They established There was slavery that had already been established by Bienville. Remember, he had created the Code Noir to regulate the behavior and the activities of slaves and slave owners. So during the antebellum period, slavery was very much in swing from 1800 to 1850. Eli Whitney had invented this cotton gin to make cotton more easy to separate the seeds from the cotton. Cotton production shot up. Slaves were flooding in from West Africa. Steamboats were carrying uh, goods such as cotton and sugar cane upriver, and it was much quicker to get there, and they were much more efficient than the keel boats that had been used before the 1800s on the river. Railroads had started to become into effect during the antebellum period, and slavery was a giant institution. In the 1850s, yellow fever swept New Orleans, killed many people. This was also the disease that had killed Napoleon's soldiers when he had tried to retake Haiti after the Haitian Revolution of Toussaint Louverture in the late 1700s. So yellow fever was a big problem in the 19th century, especially in the 1850s. Okay, moving on. Again, I told you this was going to be just a crash course of everything we've looked at this entire quarter. The Civil War happened in 1860, from 1860 to 1865. Remember, the South did not like that Abraham Lincoln was elected. He was an abolitionist, pro the abolition of slavery. He did not like slavery. The South wanted to keep slavery because that was a part of bringing in money to the South, especially Louisiana. So the South fought for the Confederacy. The Union was the North. Farragut was the Union general who sailed up the Mississippi River, captured the port of New Orleans very early in the war. You need to remember that. This is a picture of that battle. Benjamin Butler was the Union general who came into the city and controlled it for 4 years, from 1861 to 1865, almost the entire war. He issued an Order Number 28, which essentially treated the women of New Orleans told people to treat the women of New Orleans like prostitutes because they were insulting the Union soldiers. Remember, the women were very much pro-Confederacy. They wanted the South to win the war. They wanted to keep slavery in place. All right. After the Civil War was a period called Reconstruction. A huge misconception, something that is false, is the idea that Reconstruction just means the rebuilding of the South. What Reconstruction means is that the Union starts to rebuild the governments in the South, okay? So Reconstruction is really about how are we going to create one government and make the South pro-Union again, okay? Pro this idea of the entire country coming back together. During the Progressive Era, that is after Reconstruction, the 1890s to the 1920s, moving into the 20th century, one thing I wanted to highlight here, people were reacting to industrialization, okay? So we were moving from farming economy to a factory-based economy. Lots of problems happening with factories. Pollution, for example. Child labor. So one of the big pushes of the Progressive Era was women's suffrage, which was this idea that women have the right to vote and they are just as intellectual and capable as men. Anti-suffragists tried but failed to fight against the Progressive Era. They said that women were too delicate, they were not capable of politics, and they needed to be in the home taking care of children. 1919, the 19th Amendment passed, women got the right to vote, and the suffragists won. All right, moving on, the Great Depression. This happened after the stock market crash of 1929, which was the event that sparked the Great Depression. This was a time of great poverty in the United States, and there was high unemployment in Louisiana. This is a picture of people standing in line at the job board waiting to find jobs and to get food. There was a lot of people out of work. Finally, we were in World War II. This was in the 1940s in Louisiana. The main things you need to know, this pulled us out of depression. Unemployment went down. People got jobs. Women in particular started to work in factories. And our main contribution as the state of Louisiana was the Higgins boats used in D-Day, which is a picture here on the right. Okay, Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and good luck on your benchmark tomorrow.